Last week, we talked about what to do when your partner brings you misery. And the most powerful takeaway was asking yourself one crucial question every single day. Is today the day I leave? If the answer is no, then you go 100% into the relationship with love, compassion, and curiosity. No halfwaying it, no creating a living hell for both of you. But what happens when you keep asking that question and one morning something inside you shifts? When the answer isn't automatically no anymore? This isn't about dramatic moments or obvious betrayals. This is about that internal shift from I'm choosing to stay and work on this to I'm choosing to honor what my heart is telling me. It's about recognizing when you've moved from resistance and resentment into genuine clarity. Today, we'll explore how to distinguish between a bad day and a fundamental knowing, what happens in your body and mind when the answer changes, and how to trust yourself when everything feels uncertain. Because sometimes taking full responsibility for your choice and loving yourself means choosing to leave. Let's begin. Welcome to Chaos and Chemistry, a podcast focused on having all the chemistry and feel-good you desire in your relationships without the chaos and toxicity. My name is Legan. I'm a former counselor turned coach, and I'm here with my friend and co-host Max.
Hi, everybody. My name is Max. I'm a relationship and trauma coach, helping people transform their lives.
So why does this topic matter? Why is it important? Why are we talking about it? Breaking up is so hard, no matter what. It's change. It's the unknown. You're hurting someone. You're disappointing someone. You feel disappointed. They're all emotions to experience. So if you're going to go through all that you go through when you have an ending of a relationship, you want to make sure that you're leaving with clarity, love for yourself, love for the other person, peace and closure. Otherwise, what's it all for? I mean, you get out of the relationship and you just continue to suffer. We're going to be sharing 5 significant components of knowing when it's time to leave, when you're in that right space.
That's right. You don't want to leave too early. You know, most of my clients leave too early, I think. There's a saying, song go, there's 50 ways to leave your lover. And everybody just uses all of them too quickly, too soon, and they haven't learned their karmic lesson. Because everything in life is here to teach your soul how to level up. And our soul, for better or for worse, levels up through trial and tribulation, hardships. If your relationship is very difficult, your instinct is going to be to run away. But that's probably what you've been doing your whole life. So if you keep doing that, you're just setting up for another day. And these karmic patterns come repeatedly over and over again. So if you have to kind of slow down, see what is being taught, and make sure you learn the lesson so that you don't have to repeat it. I want to tell a story. This last week, Legan. So yesterday, my back was hurting. It's been hurting for a while because it's a horrible mattress. I go and I'm going to get a massage. Well, little did I know, I had stepped into basically a torture chamber with the Thai massage, where it's like a massage where this is new. I haven't seen these before, but I guess it was my time, my karma to pay back. Where the lady, like, she has these bars on the ceiling and she holds herself up and she like steps on you with her, basically the bottom of her foot. And it is excruciatingly painful. And after it, I'm like, I'm never coming back to this. This is like the worst. Why do I have to pay to suffer this much? But then I'll tell you something. The next couple of days, I'm like, wow, she really got everything out, right? I wanted the nice and soft, lovely touch, like the Swedish massage with the music. And I got like just the machine of torture, just a torture. But it was great. It's exactly what I needed. So I was thinking, relationships are similar. Sometimes you need to be tortured a bit because it's exactly what you need to wake up, to break your patterns, right? So we always want the soft, sweetest massage, but it doesn't last. It doesn't cure the problem. There's an inherent value in difficulty. So if the minute of difficulty, you're not willing to work through your stuff and figure your stuff out in the heat of the battle, but you just run away from the battle, then you're really shortchanging yourself. And I think that's incredibly dangerous to shortchange yourself, because this thing just repeats. All your patterns repeat. You'll find the exact same person and you'll just waste a lot of time because it'll be like 5 years till you're back in the same position doing it all over again.
Right. You know what your pattern is when you answer the question, what always happens to you, with what always happens to you. And that is your pattern.
That's right.
Because everybody thinks that what always happens to them is like this just ironic happenstance. It's just bad luck. And I'm like, no, this is happening to you over and over again. This has never happened to me. So what does that tell you? Clients are always like, I don't know whether to leave. I don't know whether to leave. I don't know whether to leave. And I always say there's no wrong or right answer. I mean, you can leave, but you're going to have to do this work. You can do it with this. Yeah, like you can do it with this person, or we can do it with the next person you date. But either way, you have to deal with this, you know? I mean, you can't escape it. And so it's just kind of like, who do you want to do the work with? And some people really are easier to heal with. I mean, that's for sure. Like there's people that are safer to work through your crap with, but at the end of the day, you got to work through it either way. Can't avoid it, you know?
Another story that comes to mind is the last job I was in. At some point, I mean, I was working through my stuff. I was kind of toxic. They were kind of toxic. We were all just a big toxic mess. But I started waking up because I started doing coaching. I started seeing the problem. And my initial response was, I need to get out of here. But thank God I had the wisdom back then to be like, no, this is good for me, because I had to step through every meeting, all my codependency, all my people pleasing. Like I had to be right. There were so many obstacles in my mind that just made me so resentful every time I went into work. And they were just, doing themselves. They had their own problems, but it was me that was reacting to those problems and getting angry. So if I would have left early, I would have never worked through all those issues. And it was really one of the best things I've ever done, both at my job and also did it with my relationships. But all my relationships basically the same. I have an intrinsic need to run away because I'm avoidant, right? But I've recognized that's my pattern, so I just stopped doing that. And I just sit there, and it's so uncomfortable because everything's telling me to run, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to change myself. Why am I reacting in this way? Why am I getting angry? Why am I getting resentful? Why am I making myself a victim? And in that's how you actually heal, in the fire. Because if it's not really hard, you're not putting yourself in a place where you can actually challenge yourself and work on yourself. If it was really easy, it's impossible to do it. Just impossible. So there's an intrinsic part of life that requires difficulty and suffering to wake you up to heal. And if you don't have the suffering in your life because you're always running away from it, you will never heal. That's how it works.
Right. So today's topic is important because we are going to help you go deeper into why today is the day. So that way, am I running, or is this a choice from an intrinsic place of there is nothing left for me to learn here?
Right.
And that's a totally different motivation. And you most likely, if you're in a miserable relationship, would like to have something different next time. I mean, I doubt that you want to repeat this whole circus again. And so that means that you have to fix and work on your wounding and your belief system that attracted you to this person in the first place and is keeping you attached. So that way you're not taking it with you and putting it on your next partner. We tend to leave prematurely because we really are afraid. And so we leave from a place of fear rather than a place of peace and acceptance. So the black and white thinking is, if I have peace and acceptance and love in my heart, I won't leave. That is not true. You can still leave. It's very counterintuitive, but you have to have peace and love in your heart so that you can have clarity. Otherwise, you just stay attached and you stay miserable. Number one, you don't end the relationship in a fit of rage. If you are super triggered and you can feel your body and you can feel your nervous system dysregulated, you're in an emotional state and you are unable to think clearly in those moments. We don't make good decisions in the heat of the moment. It's always best to cool off, think it through, and then get to neutral. That means your nervous system is regulated in whatever way you need to do that, and your thoughts are not racing. So your mind is calm and your body is calm. If that's not happening, you aren't in a place to make any decisions other than
cool off.
Yeah.
The only decision you have to make is actually cool off. That's a good decision to make. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%. In the triggered state, it's low consciousness. So you're going to make low consciousness decisions, and then you're going to rationalize it to yourself. But it's really just an avoidance technique. You're avoiding the pain. You're avoiding the hard conversations, and you're using the trigger as an escape method. So look how the mind wants to escape, its own shit.
Yes.
We don't want to look at ourselves. We prefer to just go out in a place of glory. But then, like we said, it just sets you up for not having cleared that, not having matured through that. So you're still at the same level of consciousness. And now you have to go find someone else to eventually get yourself in the same position.
Right. You are in a fear response, fight
or flight. No.
Fight or flight. So it's just not something that is sustainable. Once you start feeling better, you're not going to be able to trust that decision because it was something that you did in reaction.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to trust your decision. because this isn't an easy decision. And if you can't trust it, you're naturally going to go back to the comfort zone. You have to really trust that this decision is right for you.
That's right. So yeah, bailing out early in a fit of rage doesn't give you the closure you want. So you're actually setting yourself up for an entire life of suffering, remembering back to what could have been because you didn't have the conversations that needed to be had. You didn't show up mature. You didn't say what needed to be said. You didn't work through it. So now you left that cord dangling and you get to suffer for it maybe your whole life. Oh, what if I would have just chilled out a little bit,
Yes.
He was the one or whatever it was, it really sets you up bad. So don't do that.
Yes. Yes. Number 2, you've invested time to change how you are showing up in the relationship, which means you've looked at yourself for the last few months more than you've looked at your partner, and maybe more than a few months. But over the last period of time, you've been looking at yourself and you've been looking at how you're showing up, your coping mechanisms, your dysfunctional communication patterns, where you're not completely committed, where you might be failing the other person. So you've been 2 feet in to yourself and how you are showing up in this relationship, which means that you're not putting yourself in that victim position anymore, but someone who is actively working on themselves inside of this situation.
You might be the toxic one, people. Maybe that's a good realization that half your patterns is as toxic as they are, because you wouldn't have really been a match if you didn't have some toxicity in you. So if you haven't looked at your toxicity and really examined it and started working through it, you're in no condition to leave because you're going to miss out.
Yeah, you might be the toxic one.
I was the toxic one for a lot. I mean, they had their toxicity too, but I was definitely doing as toxic as they were.
Yeah.
But I thought I was right. I thought I was right.
Same. Let's just take a moment to just let that soak in. Yeah, let that soak in. You might just have some toxicity and some red flags inside of you. You can do it. You can stay with us. Don't leave yet. Don't bail on this podcast. Stay with us. All right.
So becoming conscious of that is you're basically through it, because in unconsciousness that it can live on. So the minute you start having conscious awareness of your toxic patterns, you've already leveled up. You're on the way to healing for sure.
Yes, it really is. It's a good thing. I'm glad you added that. You're on the path to something better, more, when you see that in yourself. The logical mind goes, if I see my own toxicity, it means I'm bad. I deserve this. I can't leave. Again, it doesn't mean that. It just means that these are the areas that you have to work on, so that way you can actually leave. If you don't work on your toxicity, you will continue being attached to someone that's toxic. Someone that's healthy isn't interested in toxic, half in, half out behavior. So if you chose them, you have to see the toxicity within you so that you can clear it out, purge it, work on it, shift it, change it, rearrange it, and have something better with someone else. Yeah. Number 3.
So you've started to express yourself and allowing yourself to feel the feelings that you've been pushing down for so long. So you're ready to leave when you've already experienced the grief, the sadness. And it's not the reactionary emotions to whatever's happening. It's the deeper ones, the wounding that you've been carrying from relationship to relationship, those early childhood wounds that you never looked at, that codependency, that shame, the guilt. You've processed that in that relationship because that relationship allowed you to go deep into yourself because it was so tumultuous, right? So if you haven't done that, why not take the opportunity to do now? It's a great gift. It's a really blessing. A difficult partner is the biggest blessing you could probably have, because of all my clients and myself, my story as well. If they don't have a difficult relationship, it's very hard for them to heal. The people that are in the fire that can't take it anymore, that is ripe ground for healing. Those people level up the most. The people that don't have that, they're missing out. So a lot of people want like spirituality or healing this and their chakras and everything. The best thing you could do is find a toxic relationship, because that's going to really clear you out really, really fast if you look at it as an opportunity to feel those deep feelings. But if you just waste it, well, those live on for another day.
Well, and that's a good point, that word wasting. Every minute of your life really can be an investment. And when we're in these relationships, we feel like we're wasting time.
Right.
I've wasted 3 years with this person. And that almost keeps us motivated to stay in the relationship, because we don't want to have wasted all these years with someone that actually was not the right person for us. But when you start using the relationship to grieve, not just what's happening today, but what happened as a child, what's living inside of you, the stories and beliefs about yourself that drove you to choose this type of relationship. When you start grieving that, then the relationship becomes an investment, regardless of whether it ends or not. And that's really the way to look at life. Your jobs, your friendships, your relationships, all can be an investment, regardless of whether or not they last for your whole entire life, or maybe they just are a year, maybe they're 10 years, but they can all be investments. And then when you leave them, you feel grateful for the opportunity. You see it as something that really served you. You don't have regret. And that's such a gift. You go through your life being grateful for people and grateful for hard times rather than feeling victimized, resentful, like you wasted 10 years of your life on this toxic marriage. Well, you can stop doing that today by immediately looking at what am I avoiding inside myself by being in resistance to this relationship. So when I say you're in resistance to the relationship, you are trying to change the other person. You're trying to figure out whether to stay or go instead of just surrendering to what is, whatever that is, whatever toxic behavior is going on in this relationship. Maybe there's addiction. Maybe there's, just inconsideration. Maybe there's a lot of selfishness. Maybe there's a lot of avoidance. But whatever is happening, when you pause and you surrender and you just observe it, then you have to feel. And most people are not pausing and observing and feeling because it feels really scary. So if you're in a relationship and you're trying to get clarity, it's important that you get support so that you have someone to help you learn to express and allow you to feel the feelings that come up, because they're probably feelings you've been avoiding for many, many years. In addition to grieving what is, it's important that you allow yourself to grieve the relationship you hoped it would become. And that's a part of this process too. So you're feeling it all. You're feeling the feelings of being in this relationship, the deeper feelings, not the reactive feelings, the deeper feelings. And you're also allowing yourself to grieve, and by doing so, feel disappointment because this relationship isn't what you thought it was, or maybe it's changed into something that you didn't think it would change into. But regardless, you have to allow yourself to really feel that disappointment, because most people don't get into relationships thinking they're going to end.
Right.
We get into them because we have a lot of fantasy around it. We have a lot of hope. We believe this is going to save us. It's going to rescue us. So you have to feel that disappointment. And if you haven't felt a lot of disappointment and really felt it, then you're probably not ready. You probably aren't going to know if today's the day, because that's part of it, is feeling disappointed.
You're saying you should front load the disappointment feeling versus...
Yeah.
Okay.
All of it. I mean, whatever comes up, all of it. Sadness, abandonment, rejection, loneliness. I'm trying to think of all the feelings that come when you really surrender to being in a relationship like this. Disappointment in yourself, sadness that you didn't have the tools to, or the wherewithal, or the worth to choose something different, that you thought that this was good, all of it. So number 4, what's number 4, Max?
So number 4, you know why you stayed, and now you know why you're leaving. So you've done all the processing of your emotions. You've had all the hard conversations. There's really nothing much to do or say at this point, because you've closed all the loose ends. And now it's clear from a place of peace, calmness, confidence, exactly what the next step is. It's very different from being in a trigger. This is like you've done all the work, you've done all the groundwork, and now you have exactly why they're not the right match for you. And it's beautiful. And you can go out with really loving them for what they helped you with. So you're not leaving in anger against them. You're not holding them in contempt for the rest of your life. You're seeing them as something that was on your path, that was really beautiful, that was really serving to you, that really helped you grow. And you're thankful for them. You love them still. You're not going to be in a relationship, but there's still love for them and what they shared. We're just so quick to we go from loving people to totally hating them and shutting them off forever.
Yeah.
This is so egoistic, right? But once you've done the work, you really do cherish them. I still cherish all my exes. I really cherish everyone that's been in my life, because now I see that they were totally necessary. But if I hadn't done the work, if I was still running, I may have held people in contempt. I may have said, hey, that look what they did to me. They're such, whatever. And then that would just show the level of consciousness that I'd reached. I have total grace and compassion for myself. I see myself as basically at that time with the tools I had, that's exactly what I would expect. I don't judge
Mhm.
myself negatively, and I don't judge them negatively because all the stuff they did, they were at the same level of consciousness. So we were just back and forth. But you have to like really do the work to get to those higher levels so you can truly love the person and wish them the best, right? See
Mhm.
them as like a really on your soul's journey. They were very important. And you may have a soul contract with them to like have gone through this. I think everything is exactly for a specific reason. And they were showing you love by helping you break out of all the bullshit that your mind was in.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I would say at this point in my life is probably the most love, appreciation, and compassion I've ever felt for my ex-husband. When I was younger, I was attached. So I was really looking at him as the source, right? He's the source of security. He's the source of me being lovable. He's the source of me being okay. He's the source of my happiness. I didn't see that I was unconsciously using him in a lot of ways to make me feel more secure because I felt so insecure. I felt so unworthy and so unlovable because of my childhood stuff. When I started doing this work, we were still married, separating, and over the years, I mean, it's been like 7, 8 years, I continue to do the work with him. I mean, he doesn't know it, but I
Right.
continue to challenge myself to do the work with him. And it's really been amazing how my perspective of him has changed, my appreciation of him has changed, my love for him as a human being has changed. I don't agree with a lot of his lifestyle choices. We are very different, but that all can exist at once. He has a right to live life on his terms, and I have a right to live life according to my values. And it's okay that those are different. That's why we're not together anymore. But it wasn't loving to try to force him to be what I needed. And it wasn't loving to force myself to be what I thought he
Right.
needed. And so, really, by ending things without going into all the ins and outs of whys and all that, it was the most loving thing that I think either of us had done for each other in so long. Even
Yeah.
though it was extremely painful and disappointing and sad, it still contributed. It was the first step towards having a loving relationship with him. It was like setting us both free.
Yeah. I think it's like you made a decision from a place of love
Hmm.
rather than a
Yeah.
place of fear and anger.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean there weren't days I was angry. And it doesn't mean that there weren't days. There's moments that you're just going to feel all the things. And that's part of the grieving process. But you can love someone and love yourself and feel angry. They're not, what's the word?
Mutually
The-
exclusive.
yes, they're not mutually exclusive. Thank you, Mag. It's like you can reach into my perimenopausal brain and find my thoughts.
There you go.
And I just thank you for that. Number 5, you can live with what could have been. And I think that is one of the biggest takeaways today is that today is the day when you can accept that there is going to be many times that the potential of the relationship and what could have been pops into your mind. Maybe it's Christmases or holidays or being a family if you have children or the good times, right? Even
Yeah.
toxic people have parts of them that are good. I mean, I have yet to see, unless you are, in the a serial killer, but even serial killers, you hear these stories and they're like, well, they were a really good friend.
That's
They
right.
have these other sides to them, but that's an extreme example. But, we are complex human beings and even toxic relationships have good. And that's usually what keeps us there, right? We don't want to leave the good. But no relationship is all bad and no person is all bad. So there will be things that you miss out on and that you miss that you could have potentially experienced had you stayed. So it's less about what you can't live with and more about what you can live with. And I really felt this to my core when I was separating and going through my divorce, like coming back to this, you know what, that could have been, but it wouldn't have been worth it for me. Like coming back to that question. And then I heard she's a relationship expert. Her name is Esther something. And she said it perfectly. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is how I felt. That is how I felt, where I knew that there could have been so many good moments, but it wasn't enough for me. And so it's really beautiful. She was on the School of Success and I heard her just put it into perfect words. But it's so true and helpful when you've come to this moment where you're pretty sure today is the day, but that potential unknown that might have been positive is kind of keeping you anchored to an unhealthy situation to a dissatisfying relationship. So, Max, let's recap the 5 key signs that it's truly time to leave a relationship. First, you're not making this decision in a fit of rage or emotional reactivity. You've cooled off and you're coming from a place of peace and clarity.
Second, you genuinely invested time in changing how you show up. You've spent months looking at yourself more than looking at your partner, working on your own patterns and responses.
Third, you've allowed yourself to feel all the feelings and grieve the relationship that you hoped your relationship would become. You've accepted the reality of the relationship and your partner's limitations, as well as your own.
Fourth, you know your motivations clearly. You understand both why you stayed and why you're choosing to leave.
And finally, you can live with what could have been. You accept that no relationship is all bad, and leaving means missing out on potential positives too. Remember, the goal isn't just to escape suffering. It's to leave your relationship with love, clarity, and closure so you don't repeat the same patterns in your next relationship. Sometimes taking full responsibility for your happiness means choosing to leave, but only when you've done the inner work first. If this episode resonates with you, check us out on www.chaosandchemistry.com. And if you need help, book a discovery call with us. It's the first step towards finding lasting happiness.